"Get out of this seat now," the flight attendant hissed, driving her heel viciously into the 13-year-old's shin. Blood quickly soaked through the girl's white sock. Maya didn't cry. She simply clutched her late mother's journal and limped out of her rightful first-class seat, while dozens of wealthy passengers watched in cowardly silence. The attendant smirked, confident she had just put another imposter in her place. What she didn't know was that this quiet bleeding child was wearing a biometric bracelet linked to a dormant federal aviation system. And her father, the billionaire tech architect powering every airline in America, was exactly 5 minutes away from freezing $800 million in contracts, halting the entire industry, and permanently destroying the attendant's 19-year career. Maya Caldwell had been sitting in seat 2A for exactly 4 minutes when Karen Whitfield decided she didn't belong there. It wasn't a slow decision. It wasn't something Karen wrestled with or thought twice about. She saw a black girl in a hoodie sitting in first class, and something inside her locked into place like a seatbelt clicking shut. Wrong seat, wrong person, wrong skin. Karen walked down the aisle with her shoulders pulled back and her chin lifted just enough to let everyone in the cabin know she was in charge. 19 years she'd worked this job. 19 years of smiling at men in suits and pouring champagne for women who never said thank you. She knew who belonged in first class. She could smell it. And this girl, this child, did not smell like first class. Excuse me. Karen stopped at row 2 and looked down. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Maya looked up. She had her mother's journal on her lap, a green canvas notebook with curled edges. Her backpack sat between her feet. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the boarding pass without a word. Seat 2, A first class. Her full name printed clearly. Maya B. Caldwell. Karen took it. She didn't read it. She held it between 2 fingers like it was something sticky, something that didn't deserve her attention. Then she tore it in half. "Nice try, sweetheart," Karen said, "but we both know this isn't your seat." The pieces of the boarding pass fluttered down onto Maya's lap. The girl stared at them. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She just looked at Karen with an expression that was far too still for a 13-year-old. "I need you to move to the back of the plane," Karen said. Louder now. Loud enough that the man in 1C looked up from his tablet. Loud enough that the woman in 3B paused mid-bite of her warm bread roll. "This section is for ticketed passengers only." Maya opened her mouth. "I am a ticketed now." Karen's voice cracked across the cabin like a whip. "I won't ask again." Maya began to stand. She moved slowly, carefully. The way someone moves when they know every eye is on them and they refuse to give anyone a reason to say she caused trouble. She gathered her backpack. She picked up her mother's journal. She stepped into the aisle. And that's when Karen kicked her. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a bump. Karen's heel drove straight into Maya's shin just below the knee. The sound was small but sharp, like a branch snapping underfoot. Maya stumbled forward and caught herself on the armrest of seat 3A. Her sock turned red almost immediately. A line of blood ran down from her shin and pulled against the white cotton. The man in 3A pulled his arm away. He didn't help her. He didn't say a word. He just moved his elbow and went back to his newspaper. "Walk," Karen said, "and don't make a scene." Maya walked. She walked past a woman who whispered to her husband, "They really do let anyone up here now." She walked past a businessman who cleared his throat and studied his cufflinks like they held the answers to something important. She walked past a couple who looked at each other and then looked away, relieved that the disruption was being handled. Nobody spoke to her. Nobody asked if she was okay. Nobody looked at the blood. The only person who moved was a teenage boy across the aisle. He tilted his phone slightly. A small red dot blinked in the corner. He was recording live stream. 40,000 viewers in 3 minutes. The internet saw what first class refused to. Ma crossed the divider curtain, and a different flight attendant, younger, maybe mid-20s, gestured toward the back without making eye contact. "Row 34, he mumbled. "Middle seat." She found 34C, between a man whose hoodie smelled like cold French fries and a teenager with earbuds blasting music so loud Maya could hear every lyric. She sat down. Her shin hit the hard edge of the seat in front of her, and she flinched, pressing her lips together tight. She pulled the sanitizing wipe from her bag, folded it in half, and pressed it against the wound. The sting made her eyes water, but she blinked it away. She would not cry. Not here, not for Karen Whitfield, not for any of them. The man next to her side, annoyed at having someone in the middle seat. The teenager didn't notice her at all. Maya opened her laptop. The screen was dark. She placed it on the tray table and stared at it for a long moment, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From inside, she slid out a leather bracelet. It was old, the kind of old that meant it had been held 1,000 times. The leather had darkened from caramel to almost black. Blue thread stitched along the edges, fraying in places, but one strand still caught the cabin light. A thin silver wire woven into the braid, nearly invisible. She wrapped it around her wrist and pressed the small bead at its center. Click. The laptop woke up. No logo, no startup sound, just a single line of green text scrolling across a black screen. Authentication pending. Tier 1 override protocol. Standby. Recognized device. Dr. D. Caldwell. Legacy ID 7C8-431-92X. Maya's breath caught. She hadn't seen that name on a screen in 5 years. Not since the funeral. Not since the day they told her that her mother's plane went down because of pilot error and unexpected turbulence, and all the other words adults used when they didn't want to say the truth. A recording began to play. Quiet through the laptop's small speakers, barely louder than a whisper. But Maya heard every word. If you're seeing this, it means they tried. Her mother's voice, calm, warm, like she was sitting right beside her. They tried to take something from you they had no right to touch. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them, but I built something that can... Maya's fingers trembled on the keyboard. They said bias wasn't real. The recording continued, or that it wasn't measurable. But we measure turbulence. We measure fuel to the ounce. They didn't want to measure bias because they were afraid of what they'd see. The recording stopped. A single line replaced it. This is your system now, Maya. Use it wisely or not at all. Then came the prompt. Aegis protocol. Standby. Do you wish to initiate? Maya didn't click. Not yet. She closed her eyes and pressed the bracelet against her wrist, feeling the cold metal of the wire against her skin. She could still hear her mother's voice echoing in her chest. The words weren't instructions. They were permission. She looked down at her sock. The blood had dried into a stiff brown stain. The pain had settled into a deep, steady throb. She thought about the woman who had whispered. She thought about the man who had moved his elbow. She thought about Karen's face so calm after striking a child like she had done nothing more than brush a crumb off a table. She thought about her father. 3,000 miles away, Marcus Caldwell stood in a room that didn't officially exist. The basement of his compound outside Boston had been converted 5 years ago into something between a bunker and a cathedral. Servers hummed along the walls. Screens flickered with data streams from airlines, airports, and aviation networks across the country. A single red light blinked on the main console. The first time it had blinked in half a decade. Marcus stared at it. His phone buzzed on the table beside him. No caller ID, no number, just 3 words on the screen. She's live. They know. He picked up the phone and set it down without replying. He didn't need to reply. The person who sent that message already knew what was coming. Marcus Caldwell was not a man who made threats. He was a man who built systems. After his wife, Denise, died, he didn't sue anyone. He didn't hold press conferences. He didn't write editorials or go on television to cry about justice. He disappeared. The media said he'd retreated into grief. They said his fortune was sitting in trusts, and his mind was sitting in darkness. They were wrong. For 5 years, Marcus had been rebuilding, not his reputation, not his public life. He rebuilt Aegis, the system his wife had proposed to the aviation industry. the system that would have monitored bias in real time, flagged discrimination, and escalated abuse before it could be buried. The FAA had rejected it. The airlines had laughed at it. They called Denise overzealous and politically disruptive. 6 months later, she was dead. Marcus didn't believe in accidents, especially not when the black box from his wife's flight went missing for 72 hours before being returned miraculously intact. He didn't believe in coincidence either, so he built Aegis in secret. He buried it inside the software his company already sold to every major airline in America. Not as a weapon, as a witness dormant, waiting. Connected to the bracelet Denise had made for Maya when the girl was 7 years old, and now his daughter was bleeding on a plane and the witness was awake. Marcus walked to the main console and typed a single command. A list appeared on screen. 7 airlines, 7 contracts, total value $800 million. Every contract contained an ethics clause. Section 14, paragraph 3. Any verified act of racial discrimination, physical assault, or civil rights violation involving a passenger shall constitute a material breach, granting the provider the right to suspend all services immediately. Denise had written that clause. Marcus had fought for 3 years to get it included. The airline's lawyers had tried to gut it. They'd called it performative and commercially impractical. But Marcus had leverage. His software ran their booking engines, their loyalty programs, their VIP lounges, their crew scheduling. Without Caldwell Aerospace, the plane still flew, but everything else stopped. He looked at the blinking red light one more time. Then he pressed the key. The effect was not dramatic. There was no explosion, no alarm, no cinematic moment of systems crashing. It was quieter than that, more surgical. At 11:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the booking engine for Atlantic National Airlines returned an error code. Then the loyalty program went offline. Then the VIP lounge access system at JFK stopped recognizing credentials. Then the same thing happened at O'Hare, then LAX, then Atlanta. Within 4 minutes, all 7 airlines serviced by Caldwell Aerospace experienced simultaneous system failures. Kiosks went dark, upgrades vanished, reservation systems looped. First-class passengers who had paid $12,000 for a round trip were suddenly standing in the same lines as everyone else. Marcus didn't smile. He sat down in his chair and opened a second screen. This one showed a live feed, not of airports, but of a single aircraft. Flight 4417, San Francisco to Washington, D.C. row 34C. His daughter's face, captured by an overhead camera linked to Aegis, filled the screen. She was staring at her laptop, blood on her sock, a bracelet on her wrist, and a decision ahead of her that no 13-year-old should ever have to make. "I told you she'd find it, Denise," he whispered to the empty room. "I told you she was ready." Back on the plane, Karen Whitfield stood in the first-class galley sipping sparkling water. She leaned against the counter and smirked at the younger flight attendant, refilling a coffee pot. "Another one handled," Karen said. "These kids think first class is a daycare." She actually handed me a boarding pass like it meant something. The young attendant, Tom Reeves, didn't laugh. He set the coffee pot down and looked at her. She was bleeding. Karen, she scraped herself, probably tripped, trying to force her way in. I saw her boarding pass on the floor, both halves. It said Seat 2A. Karen's smile flickered. It was fake. It had the airline's watermark on it. Karen set her glass down harder than she meant to. "Tom, I've been doing this for 19 years. I know a real ticket from a fake one. That girl did not have a first-class ticket. End of story." Tom held her gaze for a moment, then looked away. He picked up his tablet and opened a report form. His fingers hovered over the keys. "What are you doing?" Karen's voice dropped. "Logging an observation. Passenger appeared injured. No aggressive behavior noted." Karen stepped toward him. "Don't file that. It's protocol. I'm telling you as your senior, don't file that report." Tom looked at her. Really looked at her. Karen's eyes were hard, but something behind them moved. Something nervous. "I'll save it as a draft," Tom said quietly. For now. Karen relaxed slightly. Good. Trust me, this is nothing. I handled it by the book. She walked back out into the cabin, adjusting her collar, resettling her authority. She passed row 34 without glancing at Maya. The girl was invisible to her now. Problem solved, disruption handled, order restored. But Karen didn't know about the boys' live stream. She didn't know that 40,000 people had watched her kick a child. She didn't know that the number was now 90,000 and climbing. She didn't know that screenshots of Mia's bleeding sock were being shared across every platform, that the hashtag Justice for Maya was climbing into trending, that news desks in New York and Washington were already assigning reporters. She didn't know that 3 rows behind Maya, a man named Nathan Cross had been watching everything. Nathan was 61 years old, gray hair pulled into a short ponytail, thin glasses, a journalist who had stopped publishing years ago but never stopped investigating. He had been tracking Karen Whitfield for 2 years, 2 prior incidents both involving black women both buried by the airline, a university professor misidentified as using a stolen ticket, both times to black women, both times the airline made it disappear. Maya said nothing. Nathan continued, My name is Nathan Cross, I'm a journalist. Or I was. Now I just watch. I watch systems. I watch patterns. He paused. And I was watching when she kicked you. Maya's jaw tightened. Why didn't you stop her? The question hit Nathan like a slap. He had no answer that didn't sound like cowardice. Because he had been 3 rows away. Because he had seen the heel come down. Because he had watched a child bleed and done nothing except reach for his phone to email his editor. I should have, he said. I failed you in that moment, but I won't fail you now. He pulled a small device from his jacket, a key, fob-sized drive, and showed her the screen. Karen's face internal airline memos, complaint records marked resolved that were never resolved. Pattern analysis he'd been building for months. She's been protected, Nathan said. Every incident scrubbed, but your mother's system, Aegis, it archived everything I couldn't access, and now they can't delete it. Maya looked at the screen. At the top of one file, a header read, Subject Karen Whitfield, Pattern of Discriminatory Enforcement. Note escalating frequency common target profiles, verbal and physical incidents masked as compliance. You've been watching her, Maya asked quietly. Not just her, Nathan replied. The system that lets people like her hide. He leaned closer. But that system just changed because today it belongs to you. Maya turned back to her laptop. The Aegis prompt still waited on screen. Do you wish to initiate? She didn't press. Yes. Not yet. But something had shifted in her face. The stillness was no longer patience. It was preparation. In the cockpit, the captain's radio crackled, an unusual message from ground control. Flight 4417, be advised you are flagged for ethics oversight upon arrival at Dulles. Federal escort will meet the aircraft at the gate. The captain frowned and keyed his mic. Ground confirm ethics oversight. Can you clarify the nature of pause? Then passenger-related Tier 1 classification. That's all we have at this time. The captain turned to his first officer. Tier 1. When's the last time you heard that? The first officer shook his head. Never. In the FAA's Cyber Systems Integrity Room, 4 stories beneath the main campus in Washington, D.C., a screen turned red. Grace Holloway leaned forward so fast her chair squeaked against the floor. Her glasses reflected a constellation of warning icons spreading across her monitor like stars being born. That's impossible, she said. Aegis was scrubbed, decommissioned, every server wiped. Her assistant typed rapidly beside her. Signal is coming from a commercial aircraft flight 4417 San Francisco to DC Economy Class Row 34C. A personal device. Yes, ma'am. Civilian. No clearance, but it's authenticated. Tier 1 legacy override. Grace's hands went cold. Tier 1 legacy override required blood access. There was only one family in the world with that credential. "Pull up the passenger manifest," Grace said. Now it took 5 seconds. The name appeared on screen, and Grace Holloway felt the floor tilt beneath her. Maya B. Caldwell, age 13. The room went silent. Grace stared at the name. She had known Denise Caldwell. They weren't friends. They had argued publicly about Aegis during the federal hearings. Grace had called it overreaching. Denise had called her complicit. Neither woman had been entirely wrong. 6 months after the hearings, Denise's plane went down. The official report said turbulence and pilot fatigue. Grace had accepted it at the time. She had no reason not to, but she remembered what Marcus Caldwell had said at the memorial, standing alone in front of 200 people who had either ignored his wife or opposed her. They didn't kill her. The silence did. Grace looked at her assistant. "Tell the director." "I don't care if it's 4 in the morning. We have a live Aegis protocol in flight, legacy tier access from a minor, and it's syncing to our federal terminals." Her assistant stood and left the room. Grace stared at the screen. Maya's name glowed there like something burning. 5 years ago, the industry had killed Aegis and buried its creator. Now the creator's daughter was sitting in economy class with blood on her sock, a dead woman's bracelet on her wrist, and the most powerful ethics system in aviation history waking up at her fingertips. And somewhere below the clouds, in a basement in Boston, Marcus Caldwell watched the same screen his daughter was watching. The same red light blinked, the same system hummed. $800 million sat frozen across 7 airlines. And this was only the beginning. Grace Holloway hadn't taken her eyes off the screen in 11 minutes. The Aegis signal pulsed steady and bright from 35,000 feet, and every time she blinked, another terminal somewhere in America flickered red. Her assistant came back through the door, breathing hard. "Director Chen is on his way. He wants a full briefing in 10 minutes. He'll get one in 5, Grace said. "Pull everything we have on the Caldwell family. Everything. Start with Denise Bennett Caldwell's original Aegis proposal and work forward." "Ma'am, that file was sealed after the hearings." Grace turned in her chair and looked at him. "Then unseal it. We've got a live ethics protocol broadcasting from a commercial aircraft. A 13-year-old girl just authenticated with blood-level credentials that were supposed to be extinct. This isn't a drill, and I am not asking for permission." Her assistant swallowed hard and sat down at his terminal. Grace turned back to her monitor. A new line of data had appeared. She read it twice to make sure she wasn't imagining it. System freeze detected. Caldwell Aerospace Service contracts 7 carriers. Total affected value $800 million. Her hand went to her mouth. He did it. Marcus Caldwell had actually done it. At 11:14 a.m. Eastern, the first phone call hit Atlantic National Airlines headquarters in Dallas. It came from the operations manager at JFK. "Our booking system just went down. Every terminal, every kiosk, we can't process check-ins, upgrades, or loyalty redemptions." 3 minutes later, the same call came from O'Hare, then LAX, then Atlanta, then Miami, then Seattle, then Dallas-Fort Worth. Douglas Mercer, the CEO of Atlantic National Airlines, was sitting in his corner office reviewing quarterly projections when his chief technology officer walked in without knocking. "Doug, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where nothing works." The CTO set his tablet on the desk. "Caldwell Aerospace just pulled the plug. All 7 contracts. Our booking engine, loyalty platform, crew scheduling, VIP lounge access, everything they built for us is offline simultaneously." Mercer stared at him. "That's not possible. Those contracts have termination clauses, 30-day notice minimum. They're citing Section 14, Paragraph 3, ethics breach, immediate suspension, ethics breach." "What ethics breach?" The CTO hesitated. "Something happened on Flight 4417, a passenger, a child." Mercer leaned forward. "What child?" "Her name is Maya Caldwell." The color drained from Douglas Mercer's face like water from a cracked glass. He sat perfectly still for 5 seconds. Then he said very quietly, "Get me legal, get me PR, and get me everything you have on that flight." Now at 11:19 a.m., the video crossed 10 million views. A reporter at CNN had picked it up first, then MSNBC, then Fox. The footage was shaky but clear. A flight attendant in uniform pulling a girl out of her seat. The flash of a heel coming down a white sock turning red, a child walking away without a word. While first-class passengers sat in expensive silence, the comments poured in faster than any platform could moderate. That woman kicked a child on a plane in first class while everyone watched. Somebody find out who that flight attendant is. Somebody find that girl. Is that blood on her sock? That's a child. I'm never flying Atlantic National again. The airline's social media accounts were flooded within minutes. Their stock, which had opened strong that morning, dropped 4% by 11:30, then 6, then 9. On the plane, Karen Whitfield knew none of this. She stood in the galley wiping down a counter that was already clean, her movements tight and repetitive, stuck on some maintenance screen. Tom walked over and looked at it. His face changed. "Karen, that's not a maintenance screen, that's a compliance hold." "A what a compliance hold? It means your crew credentials are under review. I've never actually seen one before." Karen snatched the tablet back. "That's ridiculous. There's nothing to review. I handled the seat dispute. That's it." Tom didn't argue. He just looked at her for a moment, then went back to his station. But Karen noticed his hand reaching for his own tablet. She noticed him typing something, and she noticed that he didn't show her what it was. At 11:23 a.m., Marcus Caldwell made his first phone call in 5 years. It went to the General Counsel of Atlantic National Airlines. The lawyer answered on the second ring, confused by the caller ID that showed only a string of numbers. "This is Marcus Caldwell." Silence. "I'll assume you know the name," Marcus continued. His voice was calm. Not angry, not threatening. Calm in the way a man is calm when he has already made every decision that needs to be made. "Your airline assaulted my daughter on Flight 4417 approximately 20 minutes ago. A flight attendant named Karen Whitfield physically struck her and removed her from a seat she was legally ticketed to occupy. Mr. Caldwell, I'm not aware of any. You will be. I've activated the ethics clause in our service contract. All 7 Caldwell Aerospace systems are now offline across your network. They will remain offline until my terms are met." The lawyer scrambled. "Mr. Caldwell, you can't unilaterally suspend a contract of this magnitude without Section 14, Paragraph 3. Your legal team approved it in 2019. My wife wrote it. You might remember her, Denise Caldwell. She's the one your company called ethically distracting before you fired her." The lawyer went silent. $800 million, Marcus said. "That's what's sitting frozen right now. Not my problem. It's yours. You have 48 hours to sign the passenger dignity charter I'm sending to every carrier in the country. If you don't, the freeze becomes permanent, and the files my wife buried inside Aegis, the ones your company tried very hard to destroy, go public." "What files?" Marcus paused. Then he said, "The ones that show how my wife really died." He hung up. At 11:31 a.m., aboard Flight 4417, Maya sat in 34C staring at the Aegis interface. The system had shifted into passive scanning mode on its own, running quietly through the aircraft's internal communications crew logs and passenger data. She hadn't told it to do anything. It was doing what her mother had designed it to do, watching, recording, remembering. A new file appeared on screen. False report detected. Filed by K. Whitfield. Timestamp 11:08 a.m. Classification retaliatory action archived. Maya tapped the file. Karen's behavioral report opened in front of her. Every word passenger in 34C attempted unauthorized entry into first class. Refused to comply. Created disruption, possible safety concern. Maya read it twice. Then she closed it. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were still. Nathan Cross leaned forward from behind her. "She filed a report on you, I know," Maya said. "She called you a safety concern. I know Aegis caught it, flagged it as false, but if this system wasn't running, that report would have gone through." They would have flagged you at the gate, put your name on a list. You'd have been treated like a threat every time you tried to fly for the rest of your life. Maya turned to look at him. Her eyes were steady, but there was something burning behind them. How many times has she done this? Nathan pulled up his own files. Twice that I can prove. A professor named Dr. Alicia Warren accused of using a stolen ticket. Removed from first class, filed a discrimination complaint. The investigation said she was verbally hostile. She wasn't. I interviewed 3 passengers who were on that flight. They all said she was polite, confused, and terrified. What happened to her? She stopped flying. Drives everywhere now, even cross-country. She told me she can't walk into an airport without her hands shaking. Maya's throat tightened. And the second one, a lawyer named Tamara Brooks, removed mid-flight from first class for disorderly behavior. Her disorderly behavior was asking for a blanket and being told they didn't have any left. She pointed out that the white woman next to her had just been given one. Karen called the captain. Tamara was moved to economy and met by security on landing. Was she arrested, detained for 40 minutes, then released without charges? The airline settled quietly. Tamara signed an NDA. The complaint was marked resolved. It was never resolved. It was erased. Maya looked at her screen. Aegis had already pulled both cases' full records. The original complaints, the internal memos recommending dismissal of the claims. The pattern was there, clear and damning. Same flight attendant, same type of target, same result. She picks who she thinks won't fight back, Mia said. Nathan nodded slowly. Until today. At 11:38 a.m., the captain of Flight 4417 received a second message from ground control. This one was different. Flight 4417, be advised. You are now under FAA ethics jurisdiction. Upon landing, all crew personnel are to remain on the aircraft until cleared by federal compliance officers, no exceptions. The captain stared at the radio. In 26 years of flying, he had never heard those words. He turned to his first officer. Call the cabin. Get me the lead flight attendant. Karen's name appeared on the intercom 30 seconds later. Captain, this is Whitfield. Karen, I just got a directive from the FAA. Something about ethics jurisdiction. Do you know anything about an incident in the cabin today? Karen's grip on the handset tightened. There was a minor seating dispute. I handled it. Standard procedure. The FAA doesn't issue Tier 1 ethics holds for standard procedure. Karen, what happened? A girl was sitting in the wrong seat. I asked her to move. She moved. That's it. The captain paused. They mentioned a passenger by name Caldwell. Does that ring a bell? Karen didn't answer for 3 full seconds. In those 3 seconds, something cracked inside her composure. She had spent 19 years building a version of herself that never flinched, never doubted, never admitted fault. And in 3 seconds of silence, all of it buckled. No, she said. Doesn't ring a bell. The captain wasn't convinced. When we land, you and I are going to have a conversation. Don't talk to anyone. Don't file anything else. Just sit tight. The intercom clicked off. Karen stood alone in the galley, holding the handset against her chest. Her breath came fast and shallow. Tom Reeves appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak. He just looked at her. And in that look, Karen saw something she had never seen directed at her in 19 years of seniority. Pity. Don't, she said sharply. Don't what? Don't look at me like that. I didn't do anything wrong. Tom tilted his head slightly. Then why are they holding the plane? Karen turned away from him. She picked up her sparkling water and took a sip, but her hand shook so badly that water splashed onto the counter. At 11:42 a.m., Aegis completed its deepest scan yet. The system had been quietly decriing a file that Denise Caldwell had buried years before her death. Layer after layer of encryption peeled back each one, keyed to a different authentication metric. Biometric, temporal, geographic. The bracelet on Maya's wrist provided the final key. The file opened. Maya's screen filled with text, dense technical, but the header was clear enough for anyone to understand. Incident review. Flight A749. Dr. Denise Caldwell. Fatal event. Classification. Aegis-related system interference. Recommendation seal immediately. Risk of ethical liability to carrier. Maya stopped breathing. She read it again, then again. The words didn't change. Her mother's flight, the one they said went down because of turbulence and pilot fatigue. The one that killed 37 people, including the woman who had held Maya on her lap in a sunlit lab and told her, "One day, you'll wear this bracelet, not because of what it is, but because of what it means." The file continued. A decision tree, an algorithm used by the airline's emergency landing priority system. When multiple flights competed for the same runway during a crisis, the system ranked them passenger value risk profile litigation history. Denise Caldwell had been flagged in the system as a high-risk civil litigant. She had sued the airline industry for racial bias. She had testified before Congress. She had pushed for Aegis when no one wanted it. The algorithm didn't see a mother. It didn't see a scientist. It saw a number, and the number said deprioritize. Her plane was pushed to the back of the landing queue during an emergency diversion. It circled for 11 extra minutes. It ran out of fuel. It went down in a field in Indiana at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening while the sun was still in the sky. The black box went missing for 72 hours. When it came back, the data had been altered. Egypt had cached the original, the real black box data, the real decision tree, the real reason Denise Caldwell died. Maya's hands were shaking, not trembling, shaking hard enough that she had to set them flat on the tray table to stop them. Nathan leaned forward. "Maya, what is it?" She couldn't speak. She turned the laptop toward him. Nathan read the screen. His face went white, then gray, then something beyond color. He took off his glasses and pressed his fingers against his eyes. "My God," he whispered. "They killed her." "The system killed her," Maya said. Her voice was barely audible. "An algorithm, a formula. They deprioritized her plane because she fought back, because she wouldn't be quiet." Her eyes burned. "My mom died because a computer decided she wasn't worth saving fast enough. For the first time since she had been kicked in the shin, since she had been torn from her seat, since blood had stained her sock, and silence had swallowed her whole, Maya Caldwell's eyes filled with tears. She didn't wipe them. She let them fall. 2 drops onto the keyboard, 1 onto her mother's bracelet. Then she looked at the Aegis prompt still waiting at the bottom of the screen, released to public. YN Maya pressed, Y. At 11:47 a.m., the file hit the internet. Aviation forums exploded. Whistleblower channels picked it up within seconds. Former airline employees began posting anonymously. We saw it happen. They knew. The algorithm was designed to protect profit, not people. Denise Caldwell's name trended in 4 countries within 30 minutes, not as a tragedy, not as a footnote, as the first proven victim of algorithmic discrimination in commercial aviation history. And on Flight 4417, somewhere over Ohio, Maya Caldwell closed her laptop, pressed her mother's bracelet against her lips, and whispered, "They hear you now, Mom." Karen Whitfield refreshed her crew tablet one more time. The compliance hold was still there, but now a new message had appeared beneath it. Personnel alert. Subject Karen Whitfield. Status. Pending federal ethics investigation. Actions recommended. Immediate grounding upon arrival. Badge suspension enforced. Federal compliance inquiry initiated. Karen read it 3 times. Her vision blurred. Her legs felt hollow. Dana, the younger attendant, appeared beside her. "Karen, you okay? You look like you're about to pass out." Karen grabbed Dana's arm. "Tight. Too tight. Did you send that report, the one about the girl bleeding? I saved it as a draft. I haven't deleted." Dana pulled her arm free. "Why?" "Because sometimes the truth doesn't help anyone. Dana, you need to understand that." Dana stared at her. "Maybe not the truth you want." She walked away. Karen watched her go, then looked down at her own hands. They were shaking. She couldn't make them stop. Outside the galley window, the clouds stretched on white and endless. The plane was still 2 hours from Washington. 2 hours of knowing that the ground beneath her was already gone. And in 34, Maya opened her mother's green journal. Inside the back cover, tucked between the last page and the binding, she found a note she had never read before. Folded small Denise's handwriting, neat and certain. If they ever come around, let them. Don't make them beg. That's not justice, that's ego. But don't forget who spoke up and who stayed quiet. Love, Mom. Maya folded the note and held it against her chest. The plane hummed around her. The engines droned, and somewhere in a basement in Boston, Marcus Caldwell watched the same files spread across the world and said to the empty room, "They hear you now, Denise. They all hear you now." At 12:01 p.m., Eastern Douglas Mercer locked his office door and told his assistant to hold every call. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 5 years. It rang 4 times. Marcus Caldwell answered without a greeting. "You saw the files," Marcus said. Mercer's voice came out rough. "Marcus, I need you to listen to me. I've been listening for 5 years. Your turn. The algorithm, the priority system. We didn't know it was doing that. The engineers built it to optimize fuel efficiency and runway allocation. Nobody designed it to target anyone. Nobody designed it to protect anyone either. That was the point. That's what Denise tried to tell you. A system that doesn't account for bias is a system that runs on it." Mercer pressed his hand flat on his desk. "I understand that now. You understand it because your stock dropped 11% in 3 hours. You understand it because your booking system is dead. You didn't understand it when my wife was alive and begging you to listen. Silence. She sat in your boardroom, Douglas. She showed you the data. She showed you the patterns. She told you that the system would kill someone if it wasn't corrected. And do you remember what you told her?" Mercer closed his eyes. He remembered. You told her she was being ethically distracting. Those were your exact words. And then you fired her. 6 months later, she was dead, and you sent flowers to the funeral like that made it even. Marcus, I'm not calling for an apology. Apologies don't bring her back. I'm calling to tell you what happens next. The Passenger Dignity Charter is in your inbox. Sign it publicly. Livestream it. Let the world see your face when you do. And then we talk about what comes after. What comes after the truth about Flight A749. All of it. The decision tree, the algorithm, the black box. Your engineers altered the data. Douglas, you know that. I know that. And now the FAA knows it. Mercer's hand was trembling. If that goes public, it's not just my career. It's criminal charges for the entire board. Then I suggest you get ahead of it because Aegis already released the files. They're everywhere. You have maybe 6 hours before a federal prosecutor reads what I just told you and starts making calls. Marcus hung up. Mercer sat alone in his office staring at the wall. Somewhere below him, 40 floors of employees were trying to figure out why the systems had crashed. Somewhere outside, reporters were gathering. And somewhere at 35,000 feet, a 13-year-old girl was holding his future in her hands. He picked up his phone again and called his communications director. Set up a live stream company-wide public access. No teleprompter, no script, no PR filter. Sir, legal hasn't cleared. I don't need legal to clear my conscience. Set it up. 30 minutes. At 12:09 p.m., Karen Whitfield made the worst decision of her career. She had been pacing the galley for 20 minutes, her mind racing through scenarios. The compliance hold on her tablet, the captain's warning, the silence from ground control. None of it made sense to her. She had removed a girl from the wrong seat. She had done it a dozen times before. It always ended the same way. A quiet complaint, a quiet dismissal, a quiet return to normal. But this time, nothing was quiet. She pulled out her personal phone, the one the airline didn't monitor, and typed a text to her friend in Atlantic National's Human Resources Department. "Rachel, I need you to pull the passenger record from Maya Caldwell on Flight 4417 and delete the complaint I filed. Also need you to remove any flagged notes from other crew members. This needs to happen before we land. Call me." She hit send. The message went through. What Karen didn't know was that Aegis had been monitoring all cellular communications on the aircraft since the moment Maya's bracelet activated, not recording conversations, not reading private messages, but flagging any communication that contained the keywords in its active investigation file: names, flight numbers, case references. Karen's text hit 3 of those keywords simultaneously. At 12:11 p.m., Aegis logged the message, classified it as evidence tampering, and forwarded it automatically to the FAA's Ethics Division. Grace Holloway read it 30 seconds later. She leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her teeth. She's trying to delete the evidence from the plane while we're watching. Her assistant looked up. Do we intervene? We don't need to. Aegis already archived everything she's trying to destroy. Let her keep digging. Every move she makes is another count. At 12:14 p.m., Karen's phone buzzed. A reply from Rachel. Karen, I can't touch that file. It's locked. Something called an ethics hold. I've never seen anything like it. The system won't let me access, edit, or delete anything related to that passenger. What is going on? Karen stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She typed back, "Who locked it?" Rachel's response came fast. "I don't know. It's not coming from our system. It's external federal level." "Karen, what did you do?" Karen didn't reply. She slid the phone into her pocket and stood very still. The galley felt smaller than it had 5 minutes ago. The air felt thinner. Tom Reeves appeared again. "Karen, the captain, wants to see you now. Now." She walked to the cockpit door. It opened. The captain, James Harwell, 26 years in the air, looked at her the way a father looks at a child who has just broken something that can't be fixed. "Sit down, Karen." She sat in the jump seat behind the first officer. "I just got a 3rd message from the FAA. They're not just holding the plane on landing anymore. They're sending federal ethics officers to board the aircraft at the gate. They want to interview you specifically by name. Captain, this is completely overblown. I asked a girl to move seats. That's all." Harwell held up his hand. "I also received a copy of a text message you sent from your personal phone 8 minutes ago, asking someone in HR to delete records." Karen's face went white. "The FAA forwarded it to me. They have it. It's been logged. That's not what it... I was just trying to clarify the situation, Karen." His voice dropped low. "Stop talking right now. Everything you say from this point forward is being recorded by a system. I don't fully understand, but I know it's federal. I know it's live, and I know you are in more trouble than you realize." Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No words came out. "Go back to the galley," Harwell said. "Sit down. Don't touch your tablet. Don't touch your phone. Don't talk to passengers. Don't talk to crew. When we land, you will cooperate fully with whoever is waiting for us. Do you understand?" Karen nodded. She stood up on legs that didn't feel like her own and walked back through the cabin. She passed row 34. She didn't look at Maya. She couldn't, because somewhere deep beneath the denial and the anger and the 19 years of believing she was always right, Karen Whitfield was beginning to understand what she had done and what was coming because of it. At 12:22 p.m., Douglas Mercer went live. The stream launched from Atlantic National's headquarters in Dallas. No press room, no podium, just Mercer sitting at his desk in his office with his tie loosened and his face pale. 14 million people tuned in within the first 2 minutes. He looked directly into the camera and began speaking. "My name is Douglas Mercer. I'm the CEO of Atlantic National Airlines. This afternoon, a 13-year-old girl named Maya Caldwell was physically assaulted by one of our flight attendants. She was dragged from a first-class seat she was legally entitled to. She was kicked, she bled, and no one on that aircraft protected her." He paused. His jaw tightened. "Maya Caldwell is the daughter of Dr. Denise Caldwell, a woman this company fired 5 years ago for trying to make our industry better. We called her work unnecessary. We called it disruptive. We called it ethically distracting. Those were my words. I said them. I own them." The comment section exploded. Messages poured in so fast the screen blurred. 6 months after we fired her, Denise Caldwell died in a plane crash. The official cause was listed as pilot error and turbulence. But today, files have been released showing that the emergency landing system on that flight used an algorithm that deprioritized her plane based on her litigation history, based on the fact that she had challenged us, based on the fact that she was a black woman who wouldn't stay quiet. His voice broke. He stopped. He pressed his fingers against his eyes. 14 million people watched a CEO cry on camera. I can't undo that. I can't bring her back. I can't give Maya her mother back. But I can stop pretending. Atlantic National Airlines signs the Passenger Dignity Charter today. Not because we're forced to, because we should have signed it 5 years ago, because Denise Caldwell was right and we were wrong. He looked directly into the camera one more time. Maya, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we hurt your mother. I'm sorry we erased her work. And I'm sorry it took this much pain for us to listen. The feed cut to black. On flight 4417, Maya watched the stream end on her laptop screen. Nathan Cross sat behind her in stunned silence. The cabin around them buzzed with whispered conversations. Several passengers had been watching the same stream on their phones. He cried, Nathan said quietly. Maya closed the laptop. He should expected him to go first on the plane. You told me that. How did you know? Maya didn't answer for a moment. Then she said, the day they fired my mom, she came home early. I was 7. I was hiding in the hallway because I heard the front door, and it was too early for her to be back. She walked past me without seeing me. She sat on the kitchen floor and she cried. Not loud, just quiet. The way people cry when they've been holding it in all day. Nathan listened. And she was on the phone with him, with Mercer. Andy was apologizing, saying he had no choice, saying the board made him do it. And my mom said, Douglas, you had a choice. You just made the wrong one. And then she hung up. Maya looked at her hands. He knew she was right. He knew it then. That's why he went first today. Not because the stock dropped. Not because the systems froze. Because he's been carrying it for 5 years, and he wanted someone to take it from him. Nathan shook his head slowly. You're 13. I know you shouldn't have to understand any of this. No, but I do. At 12:34 p.m., the second carrier signed Skylink Aviation, then Pacific West at 12:41, then Continental Bridge at 12:58. Each signing came with a public statement. Some were corporate and careful, some were raw. The CEO of Pacific West broke down during her live stream and admitted that her company had buried 6 discrimination complaints in the past 3 years alone. By 1:15 p.m., and the aviation index had dropped 14%. Trading was halted twice. Analysts called it the largest single-day disruption in airline history that didn't involve a crash. But it was a crash, just not the kind that left wreckage on the ground. At 1:22 p.m., Karen Whitfield sat in the galley jump seat with her hands in her lap. She had obeyed the captain's orders. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't touched her phone or tablet. She just sat there staring at the floor while the world she had built for herself crumbled in real time. Dana came in to grab a water bottle. She stopped when she saw Karen. You should eat something, Dana said. You look terrible. I'm fine. You're not fine. Your hands haven't stopped shaking for an hour. Karen looked up. Her eyes were red but dry. Dana, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Dana waited. That note you wrote about the girl bleeding. Did you send it? Not yet. Are you going to? Dana held her gaze. Why does it matter? They already have everything. Karen's face crumpled for just a second. Then she pulled it back together. It matters because I want to know if you were on my side. Dana set the water bottle down. She sat on the opposite jump seat and leaned forward. Karen, there are no sides. A girl bled. You kicked her. I saw the blood. That's not a side. That's a fact. I didn't kick her that hard. You kicked a child. She was in the wrong. She was in the right seat. Her ticket was real. You tore it up without looking at it. I saw you. Tom saw you. The whole cabin saw you." Karen's composure shattered. "Then why didn't anyone stop me? Why didn't you say something? Why didn't Tom? Why did everyone just sit there and watch?" Dana went quiet. It was a fair question, a painful one. "Because you had seniority," Dana said. "Because we trusted you. Because we thought you knew what you were doing. I did know what I was doing." "Then that's worse, Karen. That's so much worse." Karen put her face in her hands. Her shoulders heaved once then again, but no sound came out. Whatever was breaking inside her, she was breaking it quietly. At 1:38 p.m., Aegis released one more file. This one wasn't about Denise Caldwell. It was about Karen Whitfield, not the flight attendant, the intern. 5 years ago, before Karen transferred to cabin crew, she had worked as a research intern at Skylink Aviation's compliance division. She had been part of the team that reviewed the original Aegis proposal. And in a recorded team meeting, she had said something that the official minutes omitted but that Aegis had stored in its raw feed. "We need to be careful with this system. Aegis flags too easily. A single angry black passenger could shut down an entire airport. It's too much too protective. We don't want a system that sides too hard with any group." The lead analyst had responded, "That's the point, to prevent suppression and retaliation." Karen had pushed back. "It's too aggressive. It'll create problems where none exist." The recording was now public watermark time-stamped, linked to Karen's personnel file. Her words from 5 years ago sat next to her actions from 5 hours ago, and the line between them was straight and unmistakable. The internet drew the connection in seconds. She fought against the system designed to protect people like Maya. She killed the watchdog and then became the wolf. Karen Whitfield didn't just kick a girl today. She kicked Aegis 5 years ago. On the plane, Maya read the transcript on her screen. Nathan read it over her shoulder. "She was there," Mia whispered. "She was there when they killed my mother's system. She helped them do it." Nathan's voice was heavy, and then she went on to do exactly what the system was designed to prevent. Maya closed the file. She opened her mother's journal and turned to a page near the back. A quote underlined twice in Denise's hand. "Silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's strategy." She underlined it a third time. At 1:47 p.m., the 5th carrier signed, then the 6th at 1:53, then the 7th at 2:01. At 2:18 p.m., all 9 major U.S. carriers had signed the Passenger Dignity Charter. Each announcement ended with the same acknowledgement in honor of Dr. Denise Caldwell and in respect to her daughter Maya. $800 million unfroze at 2:22 p.m. Systems began restoring across the country. Kiosks lit up. Loyalty programs came back online. Booking engines hummed. But the contracts now carried new terms: permanent ethics clauses, mandatory crew certification, third-party audits, real-time bias, reporting zero retaliation protections, and full public transparency on every discrimination complaint filed in the past decade. Marcus Caldwell watched from his server room in Boston. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He opened a drawer and pulled out a photograph. Denise holding Maya on her lap, the lab behind them, sunlight on both their faces. Maya couldn't have been more than 6. He pressed his thumb against the photo and held it there for a long time. Then his phone rang a number he recognized. Grace Holloway at the FAA. Marcus. Grace. The charter signed. All 9. Your systems are restoring, but we need to talk about the A749 files. I know there's going to be an investigation, a real one this time. Criminal referrals, board members, engineers, the people who altered the black box data. I know that too. Are you ready for what that means? Marcus looked at the photograph one more time. I've been ready for 5 years. There's one more thing. Maya she authenticated with Tier 1 credentials. She released classified files. She's 13, Marcus. There are people in this building who want to charge her with unauthorized access to federal systems. Marcus's voice went cold. You try that, Grace. You try charging a 13-year-old girl whose mother was killed by the system she just exposed. See how that plays. Grace paused. I'm not one of those people, Marcus. I'm telling you so you can protect her. She doesn't need me to protect her. She just made 9 airlines kneel. But I appreciate the warning. One more thing. What Denise would have been proud. I didn't agree with her then. I was wrong. She was right about everything. Marcus closed his eyes. I know she was. He hung up and sat in the silence of his basement surrounded by servers and screens and the ghost of a woman who had built a system that remembered when the whole world chose to forget. At 2:31 p.m. and Flight 4417 began its descent into Washington-Dallas International Airport. The captain's voice came over the intercom steady and professional, announcing the standard landing procedures. But nothing about this landing was standard. Through the cockpit windows, the runway appeared normal. But on the tarmac below, 3 black SUVs were already parked at Gate 27B. Federal ethics officers, 2 representatives from the Department of Transportation, and a woman from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, who had driven from downtown in 14 minutes after reading the Aegis files. In the cabin, passengers gathered their belongings. They whispered to each other. Several had been crying. The woman in 3B, the one who had whispered, "They really let anyone in here," sat rigid in her seat, staring at nothing. She hadn't spoken in over an hour. The plane taxied to the gate. The cabin lights brightened. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Nobody stood up. For the first time in the history of commercial aviation, an entire plane load of passengers sat still after landing and waited. Not because they were told to, but because they knew that what was about to happen mattered more than their connecting flights, more than their luggage, more than wherever they were going. Maya stood up slowly. She slid her mother's journal into her backpack. She closed her laptop and tucked it under her arm. She wrapped the leather bracelet tighter around her wrist. Nathan stood behind her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She walked up the aisle toward the front of the plane. Every eye followed her. The businessman in 3C looked at her and nodded once. The woman in 4A, who had avoided eye contact hours ago, now met her gaze and mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." Maya passed the divider curtain. She passed the first-ass cabin where her blood still stained the carpet at seat 2A. She passed the galley where Karen sat motionless, head down, hands clasped, staring at nothing. Maya stopped. She looked at Karen. Karen looked up. Their eyes met for the second time that day, but everything between them had changed. Karen opened her mouth. "I don't," Maya said. Not angry, not cruel, just clear. "Not now." She turned and walked toward the door. The jetway was waiting. The federal officers were waiting. The cameras were waiting. The whole country was waiting. And Maya Caldwell, 13 years old, blood still on her sock. Her mother's bracelet on her wrist, walked off the plane and into the silence she had finally broken. The first federal officer to meet Maya at the gate was a woman named Sandra Cole, mid-40s, sharp eyes, a Department of Justice badge on her lanyard. She didn't shake Mia's hand. She knelt down so they were eye level. Maya Caldwell. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Sandra Cole. I'm with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Are you hurt?" Maya looked down at her sock. The blood had dried hours ago, but the stain was still there, brown and stiff against the white cotton. "I'm okay." Sandra's jaw tightened. She wasn't okay. They both knew it. But Sandra didn't push. She stood up and turned to Nathan Cross, who had stepped off the jetway behind Maya. "And you are Nathan Cross, journalist. I was a passenger on the flight. I witnessed the assault." Sandra studied him. "We're going to need a full statement. You'll have one, but the girl comes first. She needs medical attention and she needs to call her father." Sandra nodded. "We have a private room set up. Maya, would you come with me?" Maya followed Sandra through the terminal. Behind them, the plane sat at the gate with its doors still open. Nobody else had been allowed to deplane. Federal officers boarded the aircraft and moved directly to the galley where Karen Whitfield sat alone on the jump seat. At 2:47 p.m., the lead officer approached Karen. Miss Whitfield, I'm Agent Davis, FAA Ethics Enforcement. You need to come with us. Karen looked up. Her face was gray. Am I under arrest? You're being detained for a federal ethics inquiry. You'll be transported to a holding facility where you will be interviewed. You have the right to legal representation. I want to call my lawyer. You can make that call from the facility. Right now, I need you to stand up and come with me. Karen stood. Her legs felt foreign. She walked between two officers down the aisle. Passengers watched her pass. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away either. Every face held something between anger and sadness. One woman, the same woman who had whispered, "They really let anyone in here," covered her mouth with her hand. Her husband put his arm around her. Tom Reeves stood by the exit door. Karen stopped beside him. "Tom." He looked at her. "Did you send your report?" Tom held up his tablet. The screen showed a single line. "Report submitted, 12:44 p.m. He had sent it 2 hours ago while she was still trying to delete everything. Karen nodded slowly. Something between betrayal and acceptance crossed her face. Then she stepped off the plane. At 3:14 p.m., Maya sat in a small room at Dalisos Airport with a phone pressed to her ear. Her father's voice came through steady and warm. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe, Dad." "Are you hurt?" "My leg." "She kicked me. It bled." It stopped now. Marcus exhaled, a long, slow breath that carried 5 years of fear and 5 years of fury. "I'm flying out tonight. I'll be there by midnight." "You don't have to, Maya." His voice cracked. "Just slightly. Just enough. You activated Aegis. You released the files. You just changed the entire industry. And you did it alone at 13 years old. I am getting on a plane." Maya closed her eyes. "Dad. I found the file about Mom, about flight A749. Silence on the other end. A heavy silence. The kind that holds something too large for words." "I know," Marcus said quietly. "You knew the whole time." "I knew the data was there. I didn't know exactly what it would show until your mother built the recovery protocol. She hid it inside Aegis before she died. She knew they would try to destroy it. She knew they would alter the black box. So she cached the original and she keyed it to your bracelet." Ma's hand went to the leather strap on her wrist. She knew this would happen. She knew something would happen. She didn't know when. She didn't know it would be you. But she knew that one day someone in our family would need the truth, and she made sure it would be waiting. Maya pressed the bracelet against her lips. She could still feel the cold wire threaded through the leather. Her mother's last invention. Not a weapon, a memory. "The Senate wants me to testify," Maya said. Marcus paused. "When? Tomorrow morning." "The Committee on Aviation Ethics. They're calling an emergency hearing. Do you want to testify?" Maya looked at the journal on the table in front of her. Green canvas curled edges, her mother's handwriting inside. Mom wrote something in her journal. She said, "Silence isn't submission. Sometimes it's strategy. I've been silent all day, Dad. I think the strategy part is over." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Then you stand up there and you tell them everything and I'll be in the front row." "Dad, yeah. She was right about everything. I know, baby. I know she was." At 6:02 p.m. across the country, Karen Whitfield sat in a windowless room at a federal facility in Arlington, Virginia. Her lawyer, a man named Gerald Pratt, sat across from her with his briefcase open and his expression tight. "Karen, I'm going to be direct with you. The evidence against you is overwhelming. Physical assault of a minor destruction of a boarding pass, filing a false behavioral report, attempted evidence tampering via text message, and now they've linked you to the Aegis suppression from 5 years ago." Karen stared at the table. "That was a meeting. I made a comment in a meeting. I was 22 years old. A comment that's now public. A comment that shows a pattern. They're going to argue that you actively worked to prevent the very system that would have flagged your behavior, and then you went on to commit the exact kind of abuse that system was designed to catch. I didn't plan any of this. I saw a girl in the wrong seat, and I..." She wasn't in the wrong seat, Karen. Her ticket was valid, her seat was real, you didn't check. You looked at her and you decided she didn't belong. Karen's eyes went red. That's not fair. Gerald leaned forward. Fair. There's a video of you kicking a child that's been viewed 200 million times. There are 3 prior victims with documented complaints. There's a text message from your phone asking HR to delete records. And there's a transcript of you 5 years ago arguing against a system designed to protect black passengers. Fair left the building about 6 hours ago. Karen put her head in her hands. What do they want? The DOJ is considering charges. Assault on a minor civil rights violations, evidence tampering, obstruction. What am I looking at? Gerald paused. If they go federal, which they will, you're looking at 3 to 7 years. The room went silent. Karen's breathing stopped for a full beat, then came back ragged. I want to make a deal. There's no deal, Karen, not yet, not with the whole world watching. They need someone to answer for this, and you're the only one sitting in this chair. Karen looked at him. I've been doing this job for 19 years. 19 years. I never got a complaint that stuck. Gerald met her eyes. That's the problem. They all should have stuck. And now Aegis is showing exactly how they were buried. At 7:15 p.m., Karen made a second decision. She fired Gerald Pratt. She told the guards she wanted to make a phone call. They gave her 5 minutes. She called a travel agent she knew personally. I need a ticket to Dubai tonight. One way, whatever's available. The agent booked it. Flight departing LAX at 11:40 p.m. Karen told the federal officers she needed to use the restroom. She walked to the restroom. She kept walking down the hallway through a side exit into a waiting car driven by a friend who owed her a favor. By 8:30 p.m., she was on a flight from Dallas to LAX. She wore sunglasses, a scarf over her hair. I'm going to need you to step aside. There must be a mistake. I'm just catching a connection. The agent looked at his screen again. Alert. Subject under ethics review. Override code AEGIS. E-escape risk flagged. Deny exit. Hold for federal inquiry. Karen's blood went cold. That system has no authority to ma'am. You've been flagged by the FAA for attempted evasion during an active investigation. You're not boarding any aircraft. 2 federal agents appeared from behind the security wall. Karen recognized their badges. Same agency, same division, same people she had walked away from 4 hours ago. The taller agent stepped forward. Karen Whitfield, under Section 94 of the FAA's updated passenger dignity mandate, you are being detained for attempted evasion of a federal ethics inquiry. Aegis registered your departure and auto-flagged your credentials. I have the right to travel. This is America. You have the right to travel. You don't have the right to flee a federal investigation. Your badge, please. Karen reached into her pocket and pulled out her airline ID. The agent took it, looked at it, and cut it in half with a pair of security scissors, right there in front of travelers lining up for the midnight flights. Families, business people, children, the very passengers she had spent 19 years serving, watched her credentials fall to the floor in 2 pieces. This way, miss. Every seat taken, every camera rolling, every screen in the country tuned in. Maya Caldwell walked across the marble floor alone. No security escort, no legal team, no entourage, just her mother's green journal held against her chest and the bracelet on her wrist. She stepped behind the microphone. The room fell silent. The chairwoman, Senator Patricia Haynes, adjusted her glasses. Miss Caldwell, thank you for being here. You have the floor. Maya looked up. Her voice did not tremble. I didn't plan to shut down airports. I didn't plan to rewrite policy or freeze $800 million. I planned to sit in the seat my mother paid for, read a book, and go home. Several senators leaned forward, but I got kicked out of that seat. Not because I caused harm, not because I broke any rule, because I didn't look like I belonged. A murmur rippled through the chamber. That moment could have ended quietly. It could have disappeared like all the others, like Dr. Alicia Warren, who hasn't flown in 3 years because a flight attendant called her ticket stolen. Like Tamara Brooks, who was detained for 40 minutes for asking for a blanket. like my mother, Dr. Denise Caldwell, who died because an algorithm decided her life wasn't worth prioritizing. The chamber went absolutely still. Silence isn't safety, and sometimes, when no one listens, you need to let the system speak louder than you ever could. She paused, took a breath, then said the words that would be printed on front pages around the world. If we're not flying with dignity, we shouldn't be flying at all. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. The weight of her words pressed down on the room like a change in altitude. Then someone stood up. Second row, an old man, pale, thin, silver hair, a weathered brown suit. He leaned on a cane and his voice cracked when he spoke. "I need to say something." Security shifted but didn't intervene. The room turned. "My name is Harold Whitfield." He paused, steadying himself. "Karen Whitfield is my granddaughter." A gasp moved through the chamber like wind. Maya's eyes widened. Harold stepped into the aisle, his cane tapped against the marble floor. Each step, slow, deliberate, the walk of a man who had been carrying something heavy for a long time. "I'm a retired aircraft engineer, 41 years in this industry. I taught Karen to love airplanes before she could spell her own name. I taught her how lift beats gravity. I taught her how a wing holds 1,000 passengers in the sky." He stopped walking. He was 10 feet from Maya now. But I forgot to teach her the thing that matters most, that integrity beats silence, that people matter more than protocol, that the uniform doesn't make you right. His face crumpled not dramatically, quietly, the way old men break when they've run out of ways to hold it together. "I watched that video," he whispered. "I watched my granddaughter kick a child, and I knew right then that the world would remember my last name differently than I hoped." Senator Haynes removed her glasses and set them on the desk. "I can't undo what Karen did. I can't speak for her heart. I don't know what happened inside her that made her think that was acceptable. But I know this." He looked directly at Maya. "I'm sorry. Not because I have to be, because I need to be. Because I raised a part of her and the part I raised should have known better." He bowed his head low, long, unshaking. A man of 81 years bending before a girl of 13, not out of weakness, out of recognition that strength sometimes looks like surrender. The chamber held its breath. Maya looked at him for a long time. She saw his hands trembling on the cane. She saw the tears he was trying to hold back. She saw a man who loved his granddaughter and was horrified by what she'd become. Maya nodded once. Small enough. Harold straightened slowly. He turned and walked back to his seat. The only sound was the tap of his cane on marble. In the front row, Marcus Caldwell sat with his hands clasped. He had arrived at midnight. He hadn't slept. He had watched his daughter walk into that chamber with the same posture Denise used to carry into every room, shoulders, back, chin, level, eyes on fire. He hadn't cried during the testimony. He hadn't cried during the video. But when Harold Whitfield bowed his head, Marcus Caldwell pressed his fist against his mouth and broke. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears rolling down the face of a man who had waited 5 years for anyone, to say they were sorry. Senator Haynes spoke. "Ms. Caldwell, on behalf of this committee, we thank you for your testimony. We move to formal adoption of the Passenger Dignity Charter into FAA regulatory code. Papers shuffled, pens lifted. The vote was taken seat by seat. Every senator spoke aloud. Aye, 12 voices, 12 votes, unanimous. The gavel fell. The charter became law." Maya stepped back from the microphone. Nathan Cross was waiting by the side door. He didn't say anything. He just handed her a bottle of water. She took it. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from release. Everything she had held inside since Karen's heel hit her shin. Since she heard her mother's voice on that recording, since she pressed Y and let the truth out, all of it was still vibrating inside her like a bell that had been struck too hard. Marcus was beside her in seconds. He didn't say a word. He pulled her into his arms and held her. She pressed her face into his chest. and for the first time in 2 days, Maya Caldwell let herself be a child. "You did it," he said into her hair. "We did it. Your mom did it." Maya pulled back and looked at him. "She started it. We finished it." Marcus held her face in his hands. "I am so proud of you, and she would be too. She would be so proud." Maya nodded, and she wiped her eyes and took a breath. "Dad, there's something else I need to do. What they're going to offer me things, awards, access, special treatment. They're going to try to make me a symbol." Marcus studied her face. "And I don't want to be a symbol. I want to build something. Something real. Something that makes sure no kid ever sits in row 34C bleeding and alone." Marcus smiled. The first real smile she'd seen on his face in 5 years, then build it. At 4:15 p.m. that afternoon, the Department of Transportation held a private ceremony. No cameras, no reporters, just Maya standing in a room with 30 industry leaders who had flown in from across the country. A representative from the department stepped forward holding a velvet box. "Miss Caldwell, in recognition of your extraordinary actions, we offer you a lifetime Global Priority Access credential. First-class priority boarding every airline for the rest of your life." He opened the box. Inside sat a gold-plated card embossed with her name. Maya looked at it for a long moment. She touched the edge of the card with one finger. Then she looked up. "No, thank you." The room went silent. The representative blinked. "I'm sorry. I don't want a fast lane because I caused disruption." Maya said, "I want the system to move slower, slow enough to see who it usually misses." "Miss Caldwell, this is a symbolic gesture of gratitude. Then let the symbol be this." Maya closed the velvet box and handed it back. "I don't need perks. I need promises. Build a system where every kid is safe, where no child has to bleed before someone pays attention. That's all the access I want." The representative took the box back. His hands were unsteady. In the back of the room, a woman in her 60s began to clap slowly. Then another person joined, then another. Then the entire room, not loud, not triumphant, respectful, the kind of applause that meant something had shifted in the people doing the clapping. Marcus stood against the wall, watching his daughter hand back a golden ticket and ask for justice instead. He thought of Denise, of the lab, of the bracelet, of the woman who had spent her life fighting for a system that would remember what others chose to forget. And now their daughter stood in her place, not seeking power, not seeking revenge, seeking protection for every child who would ever board a plane and wonder if they belonged. Maya walked out of the room and into the hallway. Nathan Cross was waiting. He had a notebook in his hand. "I'm writing the story," he said. "The real one. Not just today. Everything. Your mother, the algorithm, flight A749, Aegis, Karen, all of it." Maya looked at him. "Will people read it?" Nathan smiled. "Maya, 250 million people watched you testify today. They'll read it. Then make sure you include one thing. What my mom's name on every page. Denise Caldwell built the system. I just turned it on." Nathan wrote it down. Then he looked at her. "You know most people your age are worried about homework and who's sitting with who at lunch." Maya almost laughed. "I'll get back to that eventually." She walked toward the exit. Marcus fell into step beside her. Father and daughter silent together. Outside the building, the sun was low and warm. Cars passed on the street. People walked by who had no idea that the girl in the hoodie and the blood-stained sock had just rewritten aviation law. The world looked ordinary, but it wasn't. Not anymore. Maya's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She opened it. "I saw your testimony. I'm Tamara Brooks, the lawyer from 3 years ago, the one Karen had removed from a flight for asking for a blanket. I just wanted you to know I booked a flight today. First one in 3 years because of you. Thank you." Maya read it twice. Then she showed it to her father. He read it and nodded slowly. "That's the one he said." "The one what?" "The one that matters more than any charter or any law. One person who wasn't afraid anymore." Maya put the phone in her pocket. She reached for her father's hand and held it as they walked together toward the car. Behind them, the Capitol building glowed in the late afternoon light. Ahead of them, a road that Denise Caldwell had paved with her life's work stretched out long and clear and finally open. And at 35,000 feet above them, on a dozen different flights, crossing a dozen different skies, Aegis pulsed quietly inside the systems of every airline in America, watching, recording, remembering the way Denise had designed it, to the way Maya had demanded it, would the way Marcus had made sure it could. Not a weapon, not a threat, a promise that silence would never be mistaken for safety again. 2 weeks later, Maya Caldwell sat at the kitchen table in their Chicago apartment with her laptop open and 3 empty coffee mugs lined up beside it. Marcus had stopped telling her to drink water instead. She was 13 and she had just rewritten federal aviation law. He figured she'd earned the caffeine. Her phone rang at 7:14 a.m. Grace Holloway. Maya, the ethics review board just finalized Karen Whitfield's case. I wanted you to hear it from me before it hits the news. Maya set down her mug. What's the verdict? Permanent ban from all FAA-certified employment, domestic and international. She'll never work in aviation again. Her badge was formally revoked this morning. Her airline record has been marked, do not rehire across every carrier in the system. Maya was quiet for a moment. What about the criminal charges? The DOJ is moving forward. Assault on a minor civil rights violations, evidence, tampering, obstruction of a federal investigation, attempted evasion. Her trial is set for 3 months from now. Prosecutors are recommending 4 to 6 years. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about Karen's face on the plane, the composure, the certainty, the absolute belief that she was right. And then she thought about Harold Whitfield, 81 years old, bowing his head in front of the Senate because his granddaughter couldn't. Grace? Yes? What happened to her after LAX? After they caught her at the airport, Grace paused. She was transported back to the federal facility in Arlington. She hasn't spoken to anyone except her new attorney. She refused the plea deal. She refused it. She says she didn't do anything wrong. Her attorney tried to convince her otherwise, but she won't budge. She still believes the girl, meaning you, was in the wrong seat. Maya opened her eyes. She saw my boarding pass. She held it in her hand. I know. She tore it in half without reading it. I know that too, and she still thinks she was right. Grace's voice softened. Some people would rather go to prison than admit they were wrong, Maya. That's not your burden to carry. Maya looked at the bracelet on her wrist. The leather was warming against her skin, the way it always did, like it was alive, like her mother's hand was still wrapped around it. Thank you for telling me, Grace. There's one more thing. The National Ethics Review Board voted last night unanimously. They're appointing you as an honorary lifetime member, Youth Aviation Standards Division. You'll be the youngest person ever to hold that position. Maya blinked. I'm 13 and you've done more for this industry in 2 weeks than most people do in a lifetime. The letter will arrive today. White linen stationery gold seal. It's real, Maya. She hung up. Marcus was standing in the doorway holding a fresh cup of coffee. He'd heard everything. Lifetime member. He said, "Don't make it weird, Dad." He smiled. Your mom was nominated for that board twice. They turned her down both times. Said she was too confrontational. Maya took the coffee from his hand. Well, I kicked their entire industry in the teeth and they gave me a seat at the table, so maybe confrontational works. Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, deep and full, the kind Maya hadn't heard since before her mother died. It filled the kitchen like sunlight. So what now? He asked. Maya turned her laptop toward him. On the screen was a design mock-up. Simple, clean a plastic wristband with a QR code embedded in its surface. Above it, a name in bold letters, SkyAfe. I've been working on this for a week, she said. It's a safety system for kids flying alone. The wristband connects to Aegis through a secure channel. If a child feels unsafe on a flight, if anyone touches them, yells at them, moves them without cause, they press the band, and it logs the incident in real time. Location audio crew, identification timestamp, everything gets archived and forwarded to the FAA within 60 seconds. Marcus studied the screen. You built this, the framework. I need engineers for the hardware, but the software side is ready. Egypt already has the infrastructure. I just connected a new input channel. Maya. This is exactly what your mother wanted to build. I know. She wrote about it in her journal, page 47. She called it the invisible guardian. She said the system should never be something you see. It should be something you feel, like knowing someone is watching over you even when you can't see them. Marcus sat down his coffee. He pulled out a chair and sat beside his daughter. How do we fund it? I already called Grace. The FAA has a discretionary innovation budget for passenger safety tools. She's putting SkyAF on the fast track, and 3 airlines have already reached out after the testimony. They want to pilot it. Which 3? Atlantic National, Pacific West, and Skylink. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Atlantic National Mercer's airline. He called me personally. Yesterday said he wants to be the first carrier to implement it. He said, and I'm quoting him exactly, "I owe your mother a debt I can never repay, but I can start by protecting other people's children." Marcus stared at the table for a long time. 5 years ago, Douglas Mercer had fired his wife and called her work unnecessary. Now he was calling his 13-year-old daughter, asking to be first in line for the system Denise had dreamed of. "Did you say yes?" I said I'd think about it. "I wanted to talk to you first." Marcus nodded slowly. "Say yes, but make him earn it. Monthly compliance reports, open audits, full transparency. If he wants redemption, he pays for it with accountability." Maya typed a note on her laptop. Done. At 10:30 a.m. that morning, the letter arrived. White linen stationery, gold seal, just as Grace had described. "You are hereby appointed as an honorary lifetime member of the National Ethics Review Board for Youth Aviation Standards. Your insights, experience, and legacy will inform protocols for generations to come." Maya read it twice. Then she put it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like an airplane, her mother's old magnet from the lab. Marcus saw it and shook his head. National Ethics Board appointment held up by a $5 magnet. Mom would have done the same thing. She absolutely would have. Over the next 10 days, Maya worked not the way a 13-year-old was supposed to work, not on homework or school projects or summer reading lists. She worked the way her mother had worked, obsessively, precisely, with a focus that made the adults around her uncomfortable, because it reminded them of exactly how much they had failed to do themselves. She logged into the Aegis dashboard every morning at 6 a.m. The system had been officially adopted by the FAA as a compliance monitoring tool, but Maya had negotiated something extra, a real-time alert function not just for airlines, for passengers. Any person on any flight could now flag an incident through the airline's app. Aegis would verify, archive, and escalate. No more buried complaints, no more quiet dismissals, no more silent seats. She reviewed case files, dozens of them, incidents from the past decade that had been marked, resolved, but never actually investigated. Aegis had recovered them all. Flight attendants who had profiled passengers, gate agents who had denied boarding without cause, upgrade systems that mysteriously failed for passengers with certain last names or certain skin colors. Maya flagged each one, annotated each one, forwarded each one to the appropriate review board, not with anger, with precision. The way a surgeon cuts not to hurt, but to heal. Nathan Cross published his story on a Tuesday morning. It ran in the Washington Post under the headline, "The System That Remembered How a Dead Woman's Code Exposed Aviation's Darkest Secret." It was 12,000 words long. It covered everything. Denise Caldwell's original Aegis proposal, the rejection, the firing, the crash, the altered black box, the algorithm that deprioritized her life, the bracelet, the kick, the freeze, the charter, and on every page, just as Maya had asked her mother's name. The story was shared 4 million times in the first 24 hours. It was translated into 11 languages. It was read aloud on the floor of the United Nations by a delegate from Ghana who had experienced discrimination on an American airline and never reported it. Mia didn't read the coverage. She was too busy building. At 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the story broke, Mia took a video call with the engineering team at Caldwell Aerospace. Marcus sat beside her but let her lead. "The wristband prototype is ready," the lead engineer said. "We've tested the QR interface, the Aegis handshake, and the audio capture. Battery life is 14 days, waterproof, impact resistant, and we added something you didn't ask for." Maya leaned forward. "What a message!" When a child scans the wristband for the first time on their seat screen, a message pops up. "We wrote a few options, but we wanted you to choose." He shared his screen. 3 message options appeared. Maya read them. Then she shook her head. None of these. "What would you like it to say?" Maya thought for a moment. Then she typed directly into the shared document. The engineer read it aloud. "Welcome, traveler. If anything feels wrong, press this and Aegis will help. You are not alone." The engineer smiled. "That's the one." Marcus put his hand on Maya's shoulder. She leaned into it slightly. Just enough. 3 days later, the first batch of SkyAfe wristbands shipped to Atlantic National Airlines. Douglas Mercer personally oversaw the distribution. He sent Maya a photo of a 6-year-old girl at Denver International Airport putting on the purple wristband and grinning at the camera. The message attached said, "First one because of you." Maya saved the photo. She didn't frame it. She didn't post it. She put it in a folder on her desktop labeled Mom's Work because that's what it was. On a Friday evening, 3 weeks after the Senate hearing, Maya came home from school, dropped her backpack by the door, and found a manila envelope on the kitchen table. No return address, no postmark, just her name written in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it. Inside was her mother's old FAA identification card, worn, laminated, faded. The photo showed Denise at 32, hair pulled back, eyes sharp, mouth, set in a half smile that said she knew something the camera didn't. Behind the ID was a note, not typed, handwritten. Denise's script, neat and certain, on a piece of lined paper that had been folded so many times the creases were soft. Legacy isn't what we leave behind, it's what we refuse to walk away from. I love you, little bird. Mom. Maya held the note for a long time. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood in the kitchen with her mother's words in her hands and let the silence say what it needed to say. Marcus came in an hour later and found her sitting at the table. The ID and the note were propped against her laptop. Aegis pulsed on the screen. The bracelet glowed faintly on her wrist. "Where did this come from?" he asked, picking up the envelope. "I don't know. There's no return address." Marcus studied the ID card. His jaw tightened. This was in Denise's desk at Monarch Aviation. She left it there the day they fired her. She was so angry she forgot to take it. Then how did it get here? Marcus turned the envelope over. On the back in the bottom corner was a tiny stamp, a logo, Monarch Aviation. Mercer Marcus said quietly. He kept it all these years. Maya looked at the ID card. Her mother's face stared back at her, young and fierce and unbroken. He kept a piece of her, maybe the only piece he had left. Maya placed the card beside her laptop. She opened her mother's journal and laid it next to the card. Denise's handwriting on the left, Denise's face on the right and in between. Aegis alive and humming, doing the work Denise had designed it to do. 1 week later, Maya boarded a flight economy class seat 22A. She had turned down every first class offer, every priority pass, every VIP invitation. She flew economy because that was where the people were. That was where the system needed to work. She settled into her window seat and buckled in. A young man sat down beside her. Late 20s, crisp uniform shirt, aviation pin on his chest. His badge read J. Rivera. He buckled his seatbelt, then turned to her. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Not celebrity recognition, something deeper. "You're her," he said softly. "Maya." She tilted her head. "Do I know you?" He smiled, a little embarrassed. "No, but I know what you did. I'm in the second wave of flight ethics graduates. New program launched because of the charter you wrote." Maya blinked. "You're a flight attendant. First week I used to work at a mall kiosk folding shirts, watching the clock. Then I saw your testimony on my break, watched the whole thing on my phone standing next to a rack of polos, and you applied to aviation school. The next morning, I figured if a 13-year-old could change the whole industry, I could at least show up and try to be part of the change. Maya looked at him. Really. Looked at him. He was nervous, excited, brand new, the way every person is on their first day of something that matters. "Thank you," she said, "for showing up." He grinned. "You gave people like me a reason to." The boarding door closed. The engines hummed. The plane pushed back from the gate. Maya watched the terminal slide past the window. Then she saw something that made her breath stop. A girl walked down the aisle of the aircraft, maybe 8 years old, skin a warm bronze hair in tight natural curls, a purple backpack with a sticker that read, "Future Astronaut." She walked with her chin up and her boarding pass tight in her small hand. She stopped at first-class seat 1A. The flight attendant at the door checked her ticket, smiled, and waved her through. No hesitation, no raised eyebrow, no whispered comment, no second glance. The girl slid into her seat and buckled herself in like she had done it 100 times, like she belonged there because she did. Maya watched from 22A. Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned. The girl, sensing something, turned and looked toward the back of the plane. Their eyes met across 20 rows and a curtain that no longer meant what it used to mean. The girl smiled. Maya smiled back. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't vindication. It was recognition. One girl who had bled for a seat looking at another girl who would never have to. That was the point. That had always been the point. Jordan Rivera noticed. "You okay?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay." She opened her mother's journal one last time, the final page. 6 words in Denise Caldwell's handwriting. The same handwriting that had filled research papers and ethics proposals and love notes to Marcus and birthday cards to Maya. "The sky is everyone's right, Maya." She closed the book and held it in her lap. The plane lifted off the runway. The ground fell away. The clouds rose up to meet them. Her phone buzzed once. A notification from Aegis, an anonymous message forwarded through the system, from a parent somewhere in America whose child had flown alone last week wearing a sky-safe wristband. "My daughter landed safe. She said she wasn't scared because someone was watching. Thank you, from a mother who finally stopped worrying." Maya read it. She pressed the phone against her chest. She didn't need a golden card. She didn't need first class. She didn't need the world to remember her name. She needed this. One mother, one daughter, one flight without fear. Beside her, Jordan Rivera adjusted his collar and straightened his wingspan. Somewhere, mid-cabin, a retired couple held hands, their wrists wrapped in sky-safe bands they'd bought just to show support. A businessman scrolled through his airline app and paused on the Aegis compliance rating, checking it the way he used to check stock prices. The seatbelt sign dinged off. The cabin lights dimmed. The sky stretched out ahead, wide and patient, and no longer silent. Maya leaned her head against the window. She could see her reflection in the glass, and behind it the clouds. And behind the clouds, the stars that were always there, whether you could see them or not. She thought about her mother, about the lab, about the bracelet, about the day Denise had held it in her palm and said, "One day you'll wear this, not because of what it is, but because of what it means." She thought about Karen Whitfield sitting in a courtroom waiting for a trial that would define the rest of her life. She thought about Harold Whitfield bowing his head in the Senate. She thought about Douglas Mercer crying on a live stream watched by 14 million people. She thought about Tom Reeves pressing submit on a report while his senior tried to make him delete it. She thought about Tamara Brooks booking a flight for the first time in 3 years. She thought about Dr. Alicia Warren, who might still be driving everywhere, who might not be ready yet, but who now knew someone had fought for her even when she couldn't fight for herself. She thought about her father standing in a basement surrounded by servers pressing one button that shook $800 million loose from the hands of people who had spent 5 years pretending his wife didn't matter. She thought about all the passengers on flight 4417 who had sat in silence while she bled, And she thought about the ones who had emailed the FAA afterward saying, "I should have spoken up. I'm speaking now. Late was better than never. Quiet was better than gone." And now the sky was different. Not louder, not safer by magic, but watched, recorded, remembered by a system built by a woman who died for it, activated by a girl who bled for it, and protected by a father who froze an empire to make sure nobody could bury it again. Maya whispered to herself so softly that even Jordan beside her couldn't hear. "We're all in the air now, Mom. Time to fly right." The engines carried them forward. The bracelet pulsed once against her wrist, warm and steady like a heartbeat. And somewhere inside every airline system in America, Egypt listened. Not with anger, not with vengeance, with memory. The kind that doesn't fade, the kind that doesn't forgive silence. The kind that makes sure the next girl who sits in seat 1A will never have to prove she belongs there because she already